Hi, this is Tom with Bryn Mawr RC, and as always, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing. This week we continue working on the TRX4 chassis kit, and this week we're going to work on the differentials and start on the axle. As we see in the build steps, we're still very early in the build, and we'll be working on steps B and C. C is the rear axle and will only partially complete the rear axle assembly. 3 steps for building the differentials shown here. Here is the rear assembly exploded view from Traxxas. And what we're going to be working on in step B today is the differential assembly here. Now, we're going to make two differential assemblies. This is for the rear, and then there will be one for the front. Here is an exploded view of the differential itself. We'll see this in detail as we build it, but it's pretty straightforward. Now let's go ahead and watch those 3 steps being applied to the kit. So the first item of B1 is to insert the long output into the carriers. So these are these 2 guys. Drop that all the way through. And drop that all the way through. Then the next item is to actually assemble the spider gear. Okay, and then the spider gear gets made thusly. Each side of this cross pin has a little cutout in it. I'm not sure if you can see that. And those 2 cutouts get crisscrossed on one another. And the spider gears go over them. Oops, do it right. The spider gears go on the cross pins with the teeth inward. And there we have it. Then we drop it into the carrier or the cup. Okay. You can see him spinning in there. And I'm just trying to make sure the 2 cross cuts are aligned there. Now they're aligned. Okay. So again, this instruction B1 is for two of them. So there's 1. And we're going to do it again. There are the 2 differential housings, not housings, carriers. Still on step B, B number 2. For B2 we need 2 ring gears, which I got out previously, and the 2 short differential gears, which are here. And 4 of the button head screws. First thing we do is apply what the manual says is a large drop of grease in each of the spider gears. I'm going to say that's large. Okay, 2 large drops. I hope it stays in there. And then on the ring gears with the little diesel teeth pointing up, whoops, yes, we drop the short diff output gear in there, but we apply a small amount of grease on the side. Okay, we can do that. Small amount of grease. And we send that through. Okay. Small amount of grease. And we send it through. I have grease on my hands already. And now we place the ring gear with the other differential gear on the carrier, and we see here these 4 little notches, square notches, and we have 4 square notches there. So let me I think that's it. And then we use the 4 screws. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Gonna be lazy and use the power driver the rest of the way. I'm not sure if you can see this even. Okay, I'm going to do the rest hand tight. So there is 1 differential carrier assembly. Now we just repeat that step. We're moving to the final sub-step of step B, or the differential assembly. And this final sub-step is installing the locker slide and bearing into the differentials. In our previous steps, we built these 2 almost complete differentials. So now we're going to move on. I have the parts set out. Now, these particular bearings are definitely of a size you can tell the difference. But on earlier steps, they were very close. I could barely tell the difference, and I didn't capture it on camera. However, I used a digital caliper to help me figure out what is what. So we have everything we need. Let's commence. The back of the differential carrier has a little hole in it for the pin to go through. And we put then the 15 by 21 bearing on this side. Fits in there like that. And the 10 by 15 by 4 goes on this side. Slips on right there. And then next to the 15 by 21 is the locker slide with the teeth facing into the differential, and there you can actually see little pin slots as well. So this slides on here and captures the pin. I'm not sure if you can see that, but then you can see the actual pin sticking through where you can see that the pin is captured there. Okay. And then the 7 by 14 after that. That doesn't feel quite right. I guess that's right. There we go. There's one completed differential assembly. Let's quickly do the other. So super easy step for B3. Here are the two completed differential assemblies. Now these differentials will be used in the front and rear axles. So we'll see these guys in the next step. So that's the end of B3. Moving on to step C, we'll begin the rear axle assembly. This week we're going to get the following 6 steps done. And here is again the rear assembly exploded view. In the 6 steps that we're going to do this week, we'll get this part of the rear axle done. There are 11 total steps to build the rear axle. Here's a blown up version. So again, in the orange is what we'll get done today. We're going to get done down to the mounting points here. Then the next steps through 11 will actually be adding on the portals. Anyway, in today's 6 steps, we'll get this much of the axle done. Let's go ahead now and watch those being built. Step C is the rear axle assembly, and we're working on C1 here. And C1 asks for the rear axle housing, which is this piece here. It's a preformed plastic piece that is the assembly for the rear axle. It asks for one of the 2 differential assemblies that we just finished in step B. It asks for an 11 tooth pinion gear, which is here, and then a 5 by 11 by 4 bearing, and a 6 by 13 by 5 bearing. So we start with the axle housing. It's oriented this way. The 5 by 11 by 4 bearing goes out the back here. Nice tight fit. That's in. And the 6 by 13 by 5 bearing down here in the back of the axle housing. And I think that's writing in there correctly. Feels like it's, oh, there it goes. You gotta really push it in there. And then the 11-tooth pinion gear goes in from the back. From the back, and then you can see its tie point here in the front of the rear axle. And it calls for a drop of grease on that pinion gear. Everything is so dark in there. Yeah, I got a nice drop of grease in there. And push it back in. There we go. Pretty fast step. Now lastly in this step is dropping in one of the differential assemblies. So we have it thusly. And it asks us to put a drop of grease on the teeth of the ring gear, which as a reminder is this gear here. So put a drop of grease on there. There we go. And then we fit it into the back of the axle housing. Like that. There we go. So now it's sitting in there, and just underneath here, I'm turning the pinion gear that we placed in, and we can see that it's turning. So that is the end of step C1. Moving right along to C2, again, C is rear axle assembly. We're going to assemble the locking fork and locking cable. So here is the locking cable with an E-clip in the bag. And the locking fork is this small piece here. So this cable and fork are going to be used as our way of locking or unlocking the differentials. So let's get this thing out of here. So E-clip, the locking cable, locking fork, and locking cable. So the first thing we do is assemble the locking cable onto the fork into a slot, and then we turn it that way. Okay, then we turn it that way. So that's a little precarious, that, until we put it in. There we go. Step C3 is installing this now into the assembly. So we orientate the assembly this way with those three teeth up. Can you see what I'm doing? Yes, those three teeth up. And the locking cable goes through this hole. Goes through that small hole in the axle assembly. There, there, there. And then lastly, we just use the E-clip use the E-clip to set the locking fork into place. Okay, so the E-clip goes onto the locking cable. That took a very long time, but I got that E-clip on there. And it seems to be in there nice and strong. And then it says verify. Verify the installation. Move the end of the locking cable in and out to verify the fork moves. So here's moving the exposed part of the cable, and you can see here the fork is definitely moving back and forth. So actually pretty straightforward, except putting those E-clips on are very hard for some reason for me. And that is the end of C4. Moving on to step C5, we're going to install the differential housing cover. It's just a piece of plastic that's in the kit here. And we need 4 2.5 by 16 millimeter screws. And those are the button screws. And pretty simple, straightforward. That cap fits on really nicely. And then we have the 4 screws. And now I'll just hand tighten without the power driver. Okay, I'm going to call that good before I break something. The final step for this week will be step C6, installing the portal mounts to the rear axle. For this, we have our 2 axle portal mounts. We have 6 screws and the rear axle assembly as we have it built thus far. I have it oriented the same way in the book, and these mounts are specific to left and right. This is quote unquote the right side. This is the right side of the axle, so let's go ahead and start there. It can only go on one way. There's grooves such that it's fitted, so that's the only way it can go on. And there then is just simply the 3 screws. All right, there we have it, the rear axle assembly. As always, this is Tom. Thank you for watching. Please stay safe, take care of one another, and we'll see you next week here on Bryn Mawr RC. Thank you. Bye.